It's recording.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, my name's Edward. I'm here in Moscow, and I'm going to be talking about giving instructions. It's something that I do a lot of observations here, and a lot of teachers are quite new, although a lot of teachers are not so new. And very often, I see instructions that are not very effective, and or sometimes they are very effective but not very efficient. So we're going to start by talking about some of the pitfalls of giving instructions. Then we're going to go on to some of the real basics of giving instructions, again, just a reminder. And lastly, I'm going to give you the tip, which I give to almost everybody I observe. Okay. So we start. It's quite small on my screen. I hope it's not too small on yours, but it's fairly academic, actually. I've chosen this activity almost at random from English File. As you can see, it's a gap fill. You just have to fill in the gaps from the verb box at the top. So here are some instructions. Now, they're not real. They're concocted by me, but they're not totally unrepresentative of the kind of thing you sometimes hear. Here we are. So what I'd like to do next is I'm going to give out a text about tips about making instructions, and it's got gaps in it. No, don't start yet. Later, you're going to add your own advice, but first you've got to put one of the words you can find in the box at the top of the page into the gaps in the text, like this. Blank a list of positive da-da-da-da-da. So look up here and choose the correct word, which is make. Do you understand? What do you mean you weren't listening? Okay. Now, of course, it's all made up, but like I said, I hope it's representative. Now, we're going to take each bit of it, and we're going to see what advice we might give to the teacher to avoid this kind of problem. So the first one, whoops. Okay, yes. It seems the formatting's not working. So I highlighted the first one. So what I'd like you to do next, the advice I wanted to give there is be brief. Okay, don't give lots of commentary. Okay, look at the next line. I'll read it to you because it's not highlighting properly. I'm going to give out a text about tips about making decisions, and it's got gaps in it. What advice would you give to avoid that kind of sentence? Put it in the chat box. Okay. Well, those are both true imperatives. Stage it, yes. First, get them engaged. Well, this is kind of in the middle of the lesson, so we'll assume they've had the context setting already. Don't say obvious information is what I'm thinking of. Okay, don't say obvious information. They can see it's a text. They can see it's got gaps in. So why tell them that? If we look at the next sentence, which is no, don't start yet. What advice would you give about that? Andre says handouts. Yes, instructions before handouts. It's obvious. CELTA tutors love to pick you up on it if you do it in your lesson, but actually you'll see a lot of people handing out before the instructions. Okay. The next one is later you're going to add your own advice, but first, what could be our advice about that? Yes, Don't say that till later, says Sabrina. Okay, that's exactly the kind of thing. Be logical. Only give them the information when it's relevant. Next one is a bit further down. Like this, blank a list of the positives, so look up here and choose the correct word, which is make. What advice could we give about that? Only one task at a time, that's quite right. Sue in Jersey. Yes, Natty, do the example together. Demonstrate, don't explain. This is a real killer, and I see it in almost every lesson. You see the teacher explaining and explaining, and the more explaining they do, the less students are likely to understand because they can't follow what you're saying. Okay, and the last one, oh, sorry, not the last one. Do you understand? What advice do we give there? Yes. Instruction, closed instruction checking questions. We've all heard it 100 times before. Okay, and the last one. What do you mean you weren't listening? Yes, this is all quite right, what you're saying there. People who didn't understand probably don't want to admit it, and people who thought they understood but didn't won't even know there was a problem. Okay. So what do you mean you weren't listening? Yes, there's that. You can ask your partners. I was thinking of something a bit more basic, actually. Just make sure everyone's paying attention before you start. If you start before they're all looking at you, then there's no hope of them hearing the questions. Okay. For example, if they're watching their son play ice hockey whilst you're trying to give instructions. Right, so now we're going to move on to the supposed right way to do it, which this is the kind of thing that you might learn at CELTA or might promote at least to beginners. We're looking for an instruction. So the first instruction, here's my idea for an instruction. Fill in the gaps using words from the box. Maybe you could improve it, maybe not, I don't know. But there's my instruction. Okay. Then the ICQs. Has anybody got any ideas for some ICQs? Can they enter them into the chat box, maybe? Yes, Sean's got a good idea, yes. Complete the gaps, yeah, okay. Or complete the text. That's a good concept checking question. Where are the words you need to use, yeah? Yes, good, yes. Individual or pairs, yes. Okay. Okay, well, yes, okay. What is an ICQ? An ICQ is an instruction checking question, and it will be a closed question, not a big open question like what you're going to do probably, but something more specific like this. Now, I'm not particularly happy with my ICQs for this because they are rather redundant, I think. Okay. Are you going to use the words in the box? Yes. Are you going to go on to the next exercise? No. They're a little bit redundant if you've given the instructions. I'm going to have to move on a bit quicker now. Of course, if you add an example in before the ICQs, that makes it even easier. Okay, here's my tip, as I've only got a minute left. Is there a simpler way? And somebody's already touched on it, Sue has already touched on it, which is to elicit the instructions. Don't even give them at the beginning. If it's a really obvious task, like fill in the gaps, true or false, answer the questions, match column A to column B, just ask, what are you going to do? And if they can tell you, you don't need to check anymore. You've given the instructions and you've checked them. Okay. If they can't tell you, then you can start doing it the normal way. Okay. So here's the summary of what I went through. Don't neglect the basics of giving instructions. I think that even goes when you're addressing teachers whose English is very good. If you're doing a trading session or something, it's very useful to do it there. And elicit your instructions where possible. Okay, I give it to every teacher, but it may seem obvious, but I don't think I've ever seen a teacher do it, ever, until I've suggested it. There's the bibliography, standard references there that you'll recognize. And lastly, if I can press the right button, there we are. There's my email. And there is available a handout, I believe, that I made about this. That's great. So thank you very much, everybody. And